Hi, everyone, and welcome to another really exciting episode of Voice of Crypto's podcast, where we bring interesting guests from the Web3, crypto, and blockchain space. And today we have with us a really special founder-director duo. We have Alfredo and Auronda with us, and it's great to have the two of you here on Voice of Crypto's channel finally. And it's great that Alfredo is able to join us despite his health being a little tricky.
It's aging, yeah. But I'm getting better, so that's good.
We hope that you get better really soon. So thank you so much for joining us, both of you. And I would request you to please introduce yourself. We can have Auronda introduce her first and then Alfredo. Ladies first.
Thank you. My name is Auronda Scalera. I'm an art curator, art consultant, and I work trying to bridge contemporary art and digital art. With Alfredo, we are on some projects. One is the most important, is the Infinity Art Museum. Is a contemporary art museum on the Metaverse. And for the 2024, we will be the curator for the Decentral Art Pavilion. It's the first digital pavilion during the Venice Biennale.
Wow, sounds amazing. Alfredo.
My name is Alfredo Camerotti. I'm the other half of the curatorial duo, so to speak, and I'm an art curator and a writer, and I direct mostly in the Contemporary Art Museum in the UK, which is actually a physical contemporary art museum. But I work in the space with Auronda for a few years now, since a few years, doing the Infinity Art Museum with her and the Central Art Pavilion for Venice next year, but also other exhibitions and platforms, like we just did an exhibition in Dubai at the Art in Space for the Boulevard Festival of Digital Arts during the Art Dubai Week. And we co-founded Multiplicity, which is a curatorial and publishing platform that promotes and highlights diversity for the artists and the artistic practice in the digital space. And so we are doing kind of a lot of things and presentations and lectures and talks and whatever. Yes, and we still have fun doing it, so we'll keep doing it.
That's great. As long as you have fun doing what you're doing, it's all great. So both of you are pretty renowned art curators, and you've been in this space for quite some time. So my first question would be, how did you decide to enter the space of digital art collectibles, and what was the turning point of your journey before anything like Web3 came up?
Shall I start? Or no, you do it.
Can you start and then then I start like 3 years ago. Meantime, I used to live in Dubai because here there is a huge hub about digital and crypto and blockchain and everything. At the time I used to work only in contemporary art, but because here there is a huge community, at one point they involved me in this community, and I start to curate, to study digital art, to research about digital art. And at one point I find myself to organize exhibition, to meet artists. And for me, it was really excited to be there and discover and have new knowledge in art.
Wow.
For me, it was a path that started years ago with what used to be called new media, because I kind of come from a design environment, and then I went into curating. And so I always had some sort of a foot in the art and the foot somewhere else. Yeah. And that someone else at the time was new media, online projects, net art, film, video, for instance. And then slowly it was kind of a natural progression to become more and more interesting in digital art, obviously, because new generation of artists are using new tools and new technology. So as a curator, I think it's important actually to pay attention to those practices, emergent practices that are coming up. And when we met actually through colleagues, and we actually realized that we were sharing really the same passion in terms of digital arts. Each of us had their own curatorial practice in real life, so to speak. But then we joined forces for the digital part of it, and yes, and here we are, a few years later.
Yeah, gotcha. So 2 to 3 years is a long time in this space. I mean, any other space, you'd still be considered beginners, but yeah, you're almost a veteran with this space not being more than 10 years old, so to say. So I'm sure a lot has changed in the last 2 to 3 years. What, according to you, have been the major shifts that you have witnessed with your own eyes?
Then for me now, compared with the beginning, there is much more inclusivity, more transparency, and kind of regulation, because some of government, they have tried to give some rules compared for the beginning. It was like a far west, but the path is still long.
Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned that next week, actually, we will, is it next week? Yes, we will present at the all-party parliamentary group about Metaverse and Web3. And I think it's important to actually put there some sort of a benchmark also in terms of what sort of a government regulations, how to what extent they should actually, have some sort of a say in terms of standard and ethical procedures and protocols and that kind of thing. For me, what shifted actually is also, I can, maybe it's a sweeping generalization, so forgive me in advance, but I think 3 or 4 years ago, there were really kind of a parallel tracks. One was contemporary art and one was digital art, and the two things didn't really mix up. Artists very rarely kind of overlap the two, curators never did. And institutions even less. And now there is slowly some sort of a convergence. I don't know if I would call it a shift, but we notice actually with the artists we are working with and the commission we get as curators, that more and more artists want not only to have the experience of a curated narrative online, but also in real life. So this hybrid model of presenting a cultural product, so to speak, a cultural narrative, it's important. And equally, those actually artists who really were rooted in studio practice and artist studios and galleries-based exhibitions and physical space exhibition, they're looking much more into how they could expand their practice into the realm of digital. And that's where we can help as curators, because there are not many curators as well, bridging the two, as Auronda mentioned earlier, because it's still kind of a native type of expansion of the curatorial practice, to bridging the two, because you can import and export, you can transfer know-how, but it takes time to understand how and why and to what aim.
Absolutely. So both of you work really closely with artists, and artists who have been in traditional artists, not digital artists, so to say. And you've also co-founded a firm that sort of helps artists move on from the traditional art space, or from more or less Web 2 to Web 3. So if, as a beginner, an artist wants to transition into this space, how would that convergence work for them? And how would, let's say, US curators aid that journey of an artist?
First of all, if a contemporary artist, they want to bridge this world, their artwork, they have to have a sense to make this transition, because there are a lot of artists that think that being crypto and NFT is easy, and they can get a lot of money, but it's not like that. You have to create a sense, a meaning behind.
Yeah,
Alfredo.
it's very true. It's actually fundamental to engage in a conversation with the artist, and for artists engage in a conversation with curators.
Yeah.
There's still a relatively lack of curatorial scholarship in the space.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because there are still very few curators actually who can bring in the know-how from another sector, which is contemporary art, for instance. Yeah. And so this curators are helpful in creating the narrative for the work of the artist, framing it in a certain way, culturally, historically, future-wise, with different references to different sectors of society. This is all things that a curator can help with, because it at the end it basically presents and it plays the artist's work in a certain sort of a context. And to get this sort of a context right, I think is essential that the artist knows why he wants to explore the digital space specifically, or his work through digital means, and not just for the sake of it. I mean, it's experimentation is kind of a sacrosanct, so there's nothing wrong with it. But it needs to have a certain drive, and it needs to have a certain sort of a purpose as an expansion of their activities, I would say.
Practically, I can say that we're struggling, like curator, when some artists from contemporary art, they have to price their artwork in NFT because they want to make some high price, no? Alfredo, how many times?
Yeah, it's all
some crazy price that are not real, and then we struggling to convince them that they cannot put like million, they have to put like a normal price. 1,000.
Yeah, because it has to reflect their work somehow. So it's all an expansion of their work. It's not just something out of the blue. So it has to reflect their career to that point, and the trajectory to that point, and what kind of a collectors they are appreciated from, what kind of a institution are interested in their work. So it's all things that it needs to be considered somehow, and that's how we can help. Actually, that's the curatorial scholarship, so to speak, in terms of creating the context for the artistic work.
Do artists need to have like a concrete reason for moving on from just painting on a canvas to actually creating digital collectibles?
Good question.
I don't think they have to have a specific reason, but I think the artists have almost a duty to experiment.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
And that's all good. It's not that, oh, you never done digital before, you shouldn't do it. No, absolutely. I mean, I think we're very welcome sort of a initiative to explore opportunities and channels. But what is critical, as Auronda was saying before, is that what is the trajectory they want to be on? So what does it mean to embrace digital sort of arts in reflection to what they've done so far? Is it an expansion? Is just a change of direction? Is something that they want to try and see how it works and then reflect on it? It's a conversation they have to have with themselves first, and then with the curators. That's my opinion, at least. I don't know, Auronda, if you have any other thought about it.
So I was also wondering how contemporary art in the digital world is working out as a sector, because we do know that music NFTs or let's say sports NFTs like NBA Top Shots did pretty good, and that's pretty much what the sector was about initially when we look at digital collectibles or NFTs. But only very recently have we seen more contemporary artists get into this space, and the sector just moving from hype to art, in fact, because before that NFTs and digital collectibles were called merely PNGs, and people couldn't even make sense of what these things are, and yet they were priced at millions of dollars. But now we're seeing a more art angle to NFTs and more artists entering this space. So yes, how is contemporary art as a digital format working out, and does it have does it stand a chance to sort of grow as a sector, much like music NFTs or sports NFTs did?
Then at the beginning, like you said, they work in a parallel world. And now there are a lot of museums, for example, that they are trying to expand their collection with NFT. Then for that reason, there are a lot of attention. Some artists want to enter now this world.
Absolutely.
I like your statement, Varuni, from hype to art. That's can we borrow for an exhibition title? I think it's great.
Please
we'll give you the full credit.
Please go ahead. Love that.
It's a great summary. I think there is a growing tendency, simply because we believe that digital art is an expansion of contemporary art, as the contemporary was an expansion of the modern art, as the modern art movement was an expansion of the classical arts. So it's a journey, and it's something that they will go ahead regardless, because there are new generation of artists, and for them it's just natural working from a laptop and lines of codes rather than canvas and marbles or whatever. So it will inevitably actually be part, and we were mentioning before, this kind of a slow convergence. Yeah. So there will be this. It will take time, obviously, as it did time. It took time, ages actually, for photography or to be part of the contemporary art, or for video. It's all kind of a matter of technology being experimented by artists and then entering the mainstream field somehow.
Yeah, and even it's a mix, because now the new generation, they are nomad, then they travel all the time. For them, using computer phone is much more easier than use than make paint or a sculpture or wherever.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. Plus, it's just the medium that is changing. The message and the art still remains the same, right? Very beautifully, Alfredo said that he was juggling around new media and then this world of Web3 came, and now we're all here. Photography took its own good sweet time, and art has constantly evolved as the medium of expression has. So now it's a little pivoted towards digital, but it definitely is an extension of the contemporary art space that there is. So there are a lot of good things happening in this space, and quite a bit of technologies, whether we talk about the emergence of AI with the concepts of Web3 or Web2 or other such, revolutionary technologies that are that we see in the space today. So what are some of the most so to say, what are the two things that are really good and that you're really hopeful about? They can be technologies or just products or services that you guys are really keen on.
Then for me, for example, Metaverse and AI are going to change the world. Metaverse, because it is a space, is an infinity space. Then you can put everything that you think. That can you imagine, for the creativity of an artist, what's mean? You can create on Metaverse wherever you want. It's not only a paint or a sculpture. You can build a space that is a space of your mind, and your mind don't have limits. That's it.
Absolutely.
And the AI is only a tool of human. Then with the AI you can create. It's not that the AI is the creator. This is completely wrong.
No, very well said.
Yeah, Metaverse and AI probably are the two key elements we are looking towards. Actually, I mentioned sometimes that, Auronda, you had this vision of in a few years everyone will have their own metaverse. It will be almost individual metaverse connected with each other, interoperable to each other, which is a great vision. I think it's And I think, you know, it's AI with the generative art, and not only. I think it's a tool and an instrument for creativity, which has really untapped potential, and it will be tapped, and it's actually probably, you know, kind of it would be more a struggle for us curator to keep up with the sort of experimentation and development of ideas, rather than for artists themselves, because, you know, we are the one who needs to create the context. So the artists just do the work. So
I do have a follow-up question on that. In fact, so as curators, what are some of the typical challenges that you face? Also, being your species, being the few that you are, I'm sure it must be a challenging task to, you know, accomplish or curate the right kind of art for the right kind of people and artists. So if you could just talk about a few challenges that you face day in, day out.
Then for sure, at the beginning for us was to try to figure out which were the artists with value, because there are an infinite number of NFT artists, and select some artists that are really have a value for us, or understand their value, was a challenger for us.
Yeah.
Now it's much more different, because now we know all the artists, we know about contemporary, about crypto and blockchain, because you have to have even knowledge about economy, crypto, blockchain, that are not artistic things.
Yeah,
are economic things.
That's very true. That's very true. It was a very steep learning curve actually for us as a curators, because you deal with procedures and processes and approaches which are, you know, not artistic, not even mediatic, if you want. They are kind of steeped into and rooted into economy, into financialization, into fractalization, decentralization. It's all this kind of a vocabulary and technology that's, as a curator, you have to learn if you want to be in the space, because that's what artists talking about, and that's their language of those working in the space. So as a, you know, you have to sustain the conversation, and it's great, because it's sparks curiosity for us. It's really, we are both quite curious anyway, so it was an amazing sort of a journey that opened up. But in terms of challenges as well, it's well, security, talking about, you know, all this thing, it's one thing for sure, in terms of, you know, scams and counter scams and whatever not, and that ties into the government's type of regulation. And we know very well that, you know, decentralization is kind of the opposite of regulation in a way, or or centralized regulation. Yeah. So the two needs to reach a balance at some point. There must be some sort of a regulation protection for users actually in place, still guaranteeing some form of peer-to-peer and decentralized sort of approach, because that's the basics of the blockchain actually technology. Other challenges, Auronda, what have we seen actually practically?
Maybe the museum that they are trying to build a collection. They need for sure some more consultancy about.
Yeah, that's very,
because they just start about, and they don't know exactly, they don't understand exactly this new world. Then sometimes for them it's hard to build a meaning collection.
It's true, and we work with the Plus State Network in the UK, which is the main network of museums of modern and contemporary art, and we organize a webinar on the NFT in cultural institution, the role of the NFT in cultural institution. We have another couple planned for the Metaverse and AI. And we witnessed that actually, all the directors of the institution were there at the webinar, and the chief curators and chief development officer, whatever. But very few have done anything because there was a lack of in-house expertise and resources. And actually, to be fair, I don't know, maybe kind of it's a bit controversial here, but when we work with artists, sometimes artists themselves, they don't have that kind of a technological expertise that you would expect from a digital art. They very much rely on developers, on the tech parts, let's say, of the galleries or the platform of the institution or the curators to actually make it happen. Which is an interesting thing. It doesn't really happen in the contemporary world that an artist doesn't know how to do the work. They create the structure to do it, and that happens in the digital world as well. But it's interesting to see how these things are progressing.
That is like another added layer of skill that you need to acquire. See, not just an understanding of art and crafts, but also tech. So you didn't talk about quite a few challenges that the artists also face. So probably if you could delve, since you guys work very closely with artists, what are some of the key challenges that artists face before sort of entering this space? One would absolutely be that they are not that familiar with the tech, rely more on developers. And I think you also mentioned how this space still is very susceptible to a lot of scams or security breaches. So, I mean, are there any few right off the top of your head?
Then for sure it's about technology, how to face with technology. But for me, the most important things is that contemporary artists, they need to know the community, the NFT community. That is really important to be accepted from this community. Because NFT community, they talk about, they try to figure it out how to be more inclusive, and in contemporary art doesn't exist this community. There are curator, museum, gallery, and everyone are not connected so much like the NFT community. I don't know what you think, Alfredo.
Yeah, there is a difference there, definitely. Probably there is a grain of competition as well going on there. In terms of artists, when you're a contemporary artist in the classical term, let's say you go from art school, let's say, to artist studio, to artist run space, to small gallery, to big gallery, to institution, to collectors, and blah blah blah. And each of these stages, you do it almost by yourself. You don't read. I mean, you work collaboratively at some point when you do group show, for instance, or you run an artist run space. But it's very limited somehow in the space, inside the digital space, in the Web3 space. The community is much stronger. There are, the first collectors of an art or a digital artist or an NFT artist is their peers. So, and that becomes a very, very strong bond, which is difficult to replicate in contemporary art.
No, that does make a lot of sense. If we had to talk about a few things in this space, in the Web3 blockchain or crypto space that could have been better, what would they be? If, let's say you had a magic wand to turn it all over, what would be the few things that you'd really want to work on in terms of either the tech or the development or communities either?
With a magic wand.
Maybe I think that to make some things better in this sector, for sure, people have to study and to research a lot from, I can say, from for the point of view of contemporary art. Then for sure, gallery, museum, and curator, they have to bring their knowledge, they have to bring new knowledge. And you need time, you need a year to understand how. Then, yes, for sure, this is one of the main points.
Yeah, with a magic wand, I would say maybe one of the drawback actually of the crypto space is that in art, let's say in relation to art, is that it has been populated initially by tech and finance people, and so that suddenly actually they exploded, and that became very, very suspicious from the cultural world. So that's the two track that we were talking at the beginning, the parallel track. So you have this incredible buoyant sort of a incredibly successful world of crypto, what comes from finance and tech, and the tech bro as well culture, which is true. And on the other side, you have the cultural, I wouldn't say elites, but like looking a bit down at what's this thing actually, and which they're embedding the gatekeeping of what is culture, what is art for future generation, and these things really collided, and that's all the skepticism it's coming from. So if I had a magic wand, I would say that probably the crypto art, I would have it would have started much more from the cultural sector rather than the technological and financial sector. That would be it would have been much more smoother journey, because everyone would have seen values in that in terms of culture before finance. But we are talking about a magic wand here. So.
yeah. But because, for example, some of the other problems is that some collector about digital art on NFT, they don't know anything about contemporary art. They don't have any knowledge about. Then sometimes it's hard to explain them the value and other things.
Got it. Yes,
No.
I have to delve right to the basics of it.
For them, sometimes for them it's only number and financial stuff.
But the cultural validation is a long process. It's if we think about what we value now as art and culture, of ancient Greek, for instance, is very clear why we value or ancient South American civilization and all the things they did. But it has kind of it is a process they went through actually millennium and scholarship and history and narration and mediation, sometimes wrong, sometimes totally with a Western perspective, and so no doubt. So this is a very exciting opportunity, because we have here a whole generation of artists and a whole sort of a setup of technology and development who actually can create artworks and cultural work for future generation on a much more horizontal and equity sort of a basis, and because the validation is a peer validation first of all, then is actually quite an interesting and very, very excited actual opportunity.
Absolutely. So last year, and this I would just wrap up with two final questions.
Yeah.
And, one would be last year, which was 2022, was quite, so to say, tumultuous. There were a lot of upswings, a lot of scams, large-scale scams, which sort of gave this bad rapport to this space, right? So are you hopeful about 2023? And what are you hopeful of? And what would be your, I think predictions would be a wrong word, but what are your hopes for this year?
You go first.
You go first. Then for me, for example, for this year, for sure, the metaverse and AI will be the main point for the Web3 space, and we have the possibility, like you said before, Alfredo, to everyone at one point to have their metaverse. Then we will have like a digital twin about ourselves in a digital world that probably will be more real than our real world.
More real than real.
Yeah, more real than real. It's like a mirror, no? It's where you can project all your desire, idea, dream, all your dream.
For me, casting an eye on the future, I would say culture for sure will be more hybrid. In terms of, artists will conceive artwork and channels for their work in a much broader sort of a spectrum in a way. So it will be in real life, it will be online, it will be generated through algorithms, it will be actually sculptured, they will be made by themselves or crowdsourced or made in collaboration with a huge number of people. All these sort of different ways of conceiving artworks and presenting them, they will be explored. And which means that actually for us as a curator, for the institutions actually who we stage those work, it will be a much challenging but a much more exciting and diverse ways of mediating culture, because it will take places. It will take place in different ways, but at the same time.
Absolutely. And we have spoken about institutions playing a key role in the development of the tech and in fact the acceptance of the tech. So do you think this year would be a lot better or worse in terms of institutional adoption?
For me, it would be much more better, because last year they just start their journey. Then there was the ICA from Miami, Louvre. No, maybe Louvre is not
The
Alfredo.
Pompidou.
No, the Pompidou, yes.
And yeah, they acquired, yeah, and
even MoMA in New York, they acquired some new
and LACMA,
digital.
yeah, and LACMA in Los Angeles. There are a few institutions who actually are opening up their their collection management, let's say, and expertise to expand into digital arts, and very few still worldwide. But it's again is a journey. Then this thing will trickle down to other institutions, and in time there will be the in-house expertise for this institution to commission, for instance, digital artworks, not only collected. So you commission, you present it to the public, you distribute, you make it accessible to all, you collect part of it, you pass to future generation. That's an important development. So yes, I think there will be more and more.
Hopefully, and on that optimistic note, I would request you guys to please put forward any closing thoughts that you might have, anything that you would want to share with our viewers.
Closing thoughts. One thing that we are experimenting, can I say, maybe Auronda, we didn't talk about this one before, but we are working on a big project, which is called Web2verse.
It's a spoiler.
It's a bit of a spoiler, but which is kind of a sort of a worldwide exhibition and activation formats. It happens in different continents, in different cities. We're not saying where and how and when, but the good thing I think the exciting thing that we come up with, we're working, us and as a curator, Valentina Catricala, and a number of associate curators in different places, because we thought actually that there is the whole narrative about how we came from web to verse, which it will be impossible to stage in one go, in one single exhibition is a too big task. So breaking down that task and distributing geographically and working geographically with different people, we kind of made it manageable and much more exciting. And so we are basically, we had this huge pool of artists, more than 100 artists, but each of the iteration of the project will be including a different set of artists, like 15, 20, 25. It will be co-curated in local with the associate curator, with the responding to the place where it is staged. So it's something that it's not at all a touring exhibition, and is not at all one-off exhibition. Is an umbrella concept which is articulating in different ways according to the location. And I think this is maybe, I don't know, Auronda, what do you think? For me, it's a kind of a way to find different ways of working curatorially in the space, because it's
globally working globally for but for real.
Yeah, and it's both in real life and is online. You have this incredible opportunity to work with incredible artists, but also how do you actually create a strong sense of purpose locally? And that's where, you know, we work with these other people as well, and because which are colleagues, and which we respect it very much. So this is something that it's maybe a new format, maybe some sort of a halfway experimentation, and sort of a blockbuster in a way.
But because with this exhibition, basically we are trying to predict the future, to have like a global vision. It's not only our vision or two curators. Because in general, in contemporary art, you curate an exhibition, there is one curator, two curators, and that's it. But this is involved like curator all around the world.
So that's the spoiler, basically.
That's a spoiler, yes.
Excited for this. Really excited for this. And I hope, and I know that this will be a great success for you guys. And any sort of media help you need from Voice of Crypto, we're always here.
Thank you very much, Varuni.
Thank you.
And I do wish you all the very best for this. This was a great chat indeed, and I'm so happy that Auronda and Alfredo, you were able to join. It's really early for both of you, actually, but thanks again for joining us today.